Hello, Willow Park Church Creekside. Thank you for coming to watch this sermon. At Willow Park Church, we are one church across 3 locations in the Okanagan Valley, and our goal for our church is for people to come to know Jesus. If you have questions about Creekside or even our church as a whole, I encourage you to go to willowparkchurch.com to find out more information about us or even to reach out. In the meantime, enjoy the sermon. Hopefully you feel empowered and enriched by it, and hopefully it draws you closer to Jesus.
All right, well, if I'm being honest, I am surprised to be speaking up here so soon after Jeremy's return, but I guess that means you got tired of him, and so here I am. You're welcome, your prayers have been answered. But actually, though, okay, yes, I know, it was funny. I felt good writing it, too. I love whenever I get to come up and speak, and it's honestly an honor, and so I just wanted to say that before we get started. But we are going to be going through the end of Mark 12 today, and before we do that, I'm going to ask you to do something. I would love if you could reach into your pocket or your purse and pull out your wallets. Yeah, I'll give you a second. I'll give you a second for that one. Okay, now if you could just pass them to the front and with the PIN number written on all of that, that would be really appreciative. But all jokes aside, I hate to assume, but I think I can guess how some of you were feeling just now. Some of you probably rolled your eyes without even meaning to. Maybe you scoffed. Maybe you started to think of hypotheticals in your head. Maybe you didn't take out your wallet to begin with. Whatever it is, I want you to key in on how you feel in this moment. I want you to think about, why did I react the way that I did? Why did my hands get clammy? Why did my chest get tight? Why did I all of a sudden think that it was a stupid idea to come to church today? Why are you feeling the way you're feeling? And as Jeremy already pointed out, and it's no surprise after this, is that I have the honor to talk about money. When I was asked to talk about this, I got really excited because, it is widely known throughout most church demographics that the number one thing we all hate hearing preached about is money. And I agree with you. I really don't like hearing people telling me how to spend my money. But when Jeremy asked me, I thought, you know what? This is awesome because they're calling in an expert right now, a financial expert in not spending a dime. I am the number one cheapest person that I know. I am not flaunting it. It's a fault of mine. I'm trying to work on it. But ask anybody that loves me, and they'll tell you that whenever I cannot spend money, I don't. It's something I'm going to therapy for it, okay? But actually, what I think is so cool about this is that not only am I an expert at not spending money, just yesterday marked 3 months of unemployment for me. So you could say that money is a little bit tighter than it already is. And my arms grew shorter, and I am now unable to reach into my pockets because I don't want to grab my wallet for anything, really. And it's hard. And so when Jeremy asked me to speak on this, I actually laughed and thought, okay, God, I see what you're doing. I see what you're trying to do right now. But then about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago before this sermon, Jeremy said, hey, I will present you with an out. You don't have to speak on this. But I had already accepted the challenge from God. So here we are. And I also think it's really funny, just a little side note, that none of us like hearing talks on money, yet Jesus talks about money in 1/4 of the Gospels. He also talks about money in 40% of his parables. In over 2,000 verses in Scripture, all come down to money. So what does this say? In my opinion, I think it means that Jesus sees how important it is to Yahweh, to God, for us, for his people to know the power that money can have in our lives, the hold that it can have on us. And so that's why he talks about it so much. Now, let's get to the sermon. If you guys can turn to Mark 12:41, it will be on the screen if you do not have it. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." In this moment, it's pretty simple, but I can break this down. In this moment, I don't know how many of you like people watching, but this is a case of Jesus people watching in this moment. He's sitting in the temple and he's watching people and how they interact with others, and specifically what they do when it comes to the temple offering. And first, Jesus sees a bunch of people come in and they give large amounts of money. He doesn't condone them. He doesn't say that they're doing something wrong, right? It's great that you're giving money to the temple, but then they just walk away. And then he sees this widow. Many people, I've heard it preached, this old woman, this widow comes up and she puts in only a few cents worth of money. And he sees her and says, "You know what? Hey, disciples, you need to pay attention to her right now." And here's the reason why. Because she's giving all she has in this moment. Now, logically, when you look at this, you would think, okay, well, if this woman is only giving a couple cents, does the temple really need a couple cents to survive off of? Or would it be better for her to just keep the money and go ahead and have another meal? Would it be better for her to keep the money instead of supporting this ministry when really what's a couple cents even supporting? The other thing I want to highlight is the gentlemen, or rather the people, I just assume they're men, the people giving large sums of money. The key verse in verse 44 that I want to highlight says that out of their wealth they gave. So they just had some money laying around, they gave some money and they walked away. They couldn't have been the wiser. They didn't really care about what it meant. But this woman in the moment decided to give her all. Jesus highlights her not because she's giving a little bit and he's saying, oh, a little bit's better than a lot. He's highlighting her because her heart in this moment is being sacrificial, and she is choosing God in his ministry over her personal well-being, over her physical needs, not knowing where her next meal is going to be coming from in the coming hours, maybe even the coming days. Now, we're going to flash back 2,000, 3,000 years to the book of Exodus. Summary for where we're going in the book of Exodus. You have the Israelites who are enslaved to Pharaoh, who has been putting a tyrannical oppression over these people. And Yahweh decides that he needs to set his people free, so he elects Moses to be his spokesperson to go in and perform many miraculous acts in order to then set them free. Moses then, with the Israelites, parts the Red Sea and ends up coming to Mount Sinai, where they all camp out. And God says, I want to talk with you, Moses, one-on-one. So Moses then ascends Mount Sinai to be with Yahweh. And after a short period of time, a pretty short period of time, the Israelites, they grew impatient. And so in Exodus, there we go, it's on the screen, they gathered around Aaron, the Israelites. This is, Aaron is Moses' right-hand man. He's the next in control. And so they gathered around Aaron and said, come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we have no idea what happens to him. Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, your daughters are wearing and bring them to me. All the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol and cast into the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. They then said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. Now, outside of the obvious what the heck thoughts, like this is pretty ridiculous, there's something that's really important to this, that's key to the entire event. Before the Exodus, as the Israelites were leaving Egypt, Yahweh persuaded the Egyptians to give some of their riches to the Israelites so that the Israelites could have wealth in order to establish themselves as a nation. And so they gave gems, they gave money, they gave gold, and they gave jewelry. And these Israelites then go ahead, after being given provision by Yahweh, they instead take that gift, that blessing, and they form it into an idol for them to worship. And not only that, it's not only an idol, but it's also an idol that they attribute the same acts that Yahweh had done for the Israelites and said, you know what, no, it wasn't Yahweh, it was this golden calf right here. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. And here's a little artistic picture of the golden calf. But something that I think about, or at least I used to think about, was, okay, that's the Israelites. You know, I'm not that dumb. I would never build a golden calf and worship it and attribute all God's miracles to it. And that's pretty, archaic. Is it though? Because I don't think we're that above the Israelites. Behind, you're going to see another photo. And I don't know about you, but that kind of looks like a cow. More specifically, a bull. But does anybody know where this is? It is in New York. More specifically, it is right in front of Wall Street. Wall Street, also known as the world financial hub, sees millions of dollars come in and out on an hourly basis. It's honestly this spectacle to the financial institution. It's amazing. If you're a finance guy, you want to work there because you can make it big there. It's awesome if you like money. And at the top of it, or rather the top, is right out front a bronze statue of a bull. And so I do not think that we're that far off when it comes to worshiping idols that are made of money. Now let's go back to Mark for a second. Why would I bring up something that is from a couple thousand years ago and then a photo from New York City when talking about this widow who gives only a few cents? Well, church, I want to present you with a mirror today. Are you someone who gives and gives sacrificially? Or are you like the Israelites who in a moment turn the blessings into the blesser? They turn their money into their God. Now, quick history fact for you. The god of money back in ancient days was known as Mammon. Mammon was seen as the god of finances and prosperity, and anyone who desired Mammon's blessings, they would sacrifice to that god and in return receive prosperity. Anyone who was rich was seen as being highly favored by Mammon, and anybody who was destitute and had no money was seen as experiencing his wrath. Now again, I'm bringing up some sort of archaic concept, but I am here to tell you that I think that Mammon is actually very much alive and well today. I mean, think about it. Our neighbors down south, America, for the few Americans that are here, the whole American dream idea is to sacrifice and to strive for unimaginable wealth. That's the goal. That's the whole American dream, is to get rich and to get the rich get richer. Woo! That's the goal. Or maybe you're like me. Maybe you don't care about being rich. Maybe you're not materialistic. You don't want nice cars. You don't want a nice house. You don't really care. You just want to get by. But instead, you hoard your wealth. You know, somebody once told me when I was asked, Matt, do you think Mammon's your God? Do you worship Mammon? I would say, no, I don't worship Mammon. And this person then decided to tell me, actually, I think you don't worship him, but you definitely fear his wrath. You're definitely afraid that he is going to take away your money. And, it's true. This woman, the widow, she didn't fear Mammon's wrath. She clearly did not want his prosperity and his blessings. No, she saw Yahweh as the King of Kings, as the Lord of Lords, and said, I'm going to give up what I have right now to him. So I'll ask again, church, but in a different way. Are you worshiping Mammon, or are you sacrificing to the God of gods? Really ask yourself that. But let's focus in on ourselves, because at this point, I assume some of you have grown tired of this sermon. Some of you feel frustrated. Some of you feel a little uncomfortable. And it's true. Most churchgoers, actually, if we were to take a poll, I would guess that most churchgoers desire for money to be talked about maximum 2 to 3 times a year. And if it's talked about less, we celebrate that and think, man, that church is great. They're not asking for my money. This is huge. I used to feel that way too. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody wants somebody else telling them how to spend their hard-earned money. And also, we always get this. Well, you know, Matt, actually, I tithe 10%, so I'm good. My hands are wiped clean of this. And thank you to the random voice in my head for bringing up tithing, because that's where we're going into. A little history behind tithing. The concept of the 10% tithe originates from the book of Genesis and the book of Leviticus. In Genesis, you have Jacob, who devotes 10% of all he has to Yahweh. And in the book of Leviticus, you then have Yahweh commanding the Israelites to devote 10% of all the produce that they create, or all of their hard working labor, the earnings of that, to him, set it aside and make it holy. The word tithe even means tenth of, if you didn't know. So when we're going around collecting tithe, we're collecting tenth of. Tenth of what? Tenth of your overall earnings. Now, maybe you do pay your 10% tithe, which we're about to see in a moment. Statistically, a lot of us don't give 10%. But even if you do give your 10%, a lot of people say that that's their ceiling, that's their cap. I've done everything that God has asked me to do. I have given my 10%. Don't ask me to do anything else, Lord. Don't ask me to do anything else. Oh, there's somebody in need. Sorry, I already paid my 10% tithe. My hands are wiped clean of this situation. But what if the 10% that we always talk about is the floor and not the ceiling to our giving? What if Yahweh actually says, here's 10%, that's the starting line to your giving, not the finish? Have you ever considered that? Because we all treat it, and I'm including myself in this, we all treat a 10% tithe as the finish line to our giving, when maybe it's the starting line. Maybe it's the bare minimum. You know, back in Mark 12, we see that people were giving large sums of money, but they were giving from their excess wealth, and they didn't feel it. It didn't affect them. Well, I was reading this book that was recommended to me about a year ago. It's called The Wealthy Barber, if any of you have heard of it. It's written by a finance guy in Ontario. It's a great book, highly recommend it. And in this financial book, he talks about how the key to saving, or the key to putting money into stocks, take 10% out and put it into those accounts, and he guarantees within 1 to 2 months, you will never even notice that 10% is missing. What does that say about 10%? I kind of think it means that 10% is not needed for our livelihood. That financially, according to this financial professional, 10% is the bare minimum. It's the scraps off the table. You'll never notice it's gone. And yet we go ahead and decide to look at God and say, hey, God, here's my scraps. Here's my 10%. I'm doing what you told me to. And we go about our merry way. Does anybody find that acceptable? Does anybody find it acceptable to see God and think, you know, I come and we worship God and I call him Lord of Lords, Kings of Kings. God, you have my life, but when it comes to my wallet, 10%. You don't get to touch the rest. And again, I'm talking as somebody who is so bad with finances when it comes to wanting to spend money, but it blows my mind after doing this research that 10% is the bare minimum, and we're looking at God, we're saying Jesus is Lord, but yet I I think Mammon's your Lord if you think 10% is all that you need to give. I think you're allowing your flesh to dictate how much you give instead of allowing God to dictate what you're doing. And I'm talking to myself, and I'm sorry if I'm getting a little heated. And honestly, I'm sure some excuses are flooding through your brains right now. Oh, but Matt, I have this financial thing. Oh, but Matt, I also give to this. This is between you and God at the end of the day. I don't know your financial situations, but what I do know is that every person struggles with money. How do I know? Because Jesus talks about it so much that he makes it very clear. You need to get a hold on this before it gets a hold on you. Sorry. I also want to clarify that if some of you give 10% and you struggle to give 10%, or some of you throw the number out the window for a second. Whatever you give, if it's a struggle to give, I'm not telling you to give more. I'm not. But what I'm asking you, for most of us, is how you're financially positioning yourself. Is it in a sacrificial way to God where he can use your finances whenever you want? Because at the end of the day, it's between you and Jesus. You hear that a lot as an excuse. Hey, it's between me and God. You're right, it is between you and God. Have you ever actually checked your heart posture in this? Or are you just assuming that he's okay with what you're doing? Now, we're going to do something really fun here. Don't pull it up yet, people in the back. But behind me, there's going to be a graph. And this graph is a calculation done by myself, taking the BC average income of one person, which is $50,000. It's actually 53, but I rounded down to make it easier for numbers. And we're taking this average, and then I'm going to show you the average amount of money that you spend on certain things according to the government of Canada. And then we're going to throw it into percentages, just to do a little math class for you. So, I wonder if any of this will shock you. It might not. The average Canadian spends $3,000 to $4,600 on entertainment a year, or 6 to 9% of your overall income. Eating out equates to $3,700 a year, or 7.5%. And everyone's favorite, including my wife's, Starbucks. Starbucks average spending for a Canadian equates to $2,850 a year. That is 5% of your overall income. If I'm being honest, that's pretty generous, because I handle our finances. I see how much my wife spends on coffee. Sorry, I'm not trying to. Anyways, we're working on it. It's fine. Now, the average churchgoer, when it comes to tithing, gives $1,150 to $2,850 a year. You can go ahead and throw it up on the screen. So I decided to be nice and put the average high tithe and low tithe there. But do any of you find that number acceptable? The fact that Starbucks is practically tied with the tithe high? I don't know. Kind of looks like maybe the green mermaid might be somebody that you're worshiping. I say kind of funnily, but kind of not at the same time. I also want to do another math thing, and it will not be on the slides. But taking the high percentage, because I'm being generous here right now, of the 5.7% of the tithe, multiplying that average number by, we're doing 65 average congregants of Creekside. We're talking about us here. Now, sometimes we have more, sometimes we have less. But according to the math, Creekside generates $185,250 a year. Wow, that sounds like a lot of money. Okay. We rent this space. We provide coffee and food. We host events. You get free childcare. If I'm being honest, you get free youth care for any of you that have high schoolers. You're welcome for that hour and a half of bliss that you get. And this amount of money is able to support one staff, one full-time staff, and that is Jeremy. $185,000. Okay. Well, if you do the math on the 10% statistic of how much we are called to give, then Creekside should actually be making $325,000 a year. $185,000 versus $325,000. That's a pretty big difference. You know, if we make that, maybe I would actually, be able to work for you. Yeah, I need a job, guys. But $325,000. And if we take what Jesus says seriously and take what this redhead in the front is saying seriously, then $325 should be the bare minimum of how much this church gets. That's the bare minimum. But yeah, we're not even making the bare minimum. It's just something to think about, guys. Now, to make it a little more personal again, last month, money was beginning to get a little tight. As I said, this is month 3 of unemployment for me. And last month in October, I was starting to stress a little bit financially. I was getting a little worried. I wasn't allowing my wife to see that I was getting worried, but I was getting a little worried. And one day I decided to look in my bank account because, who else opens their bank account at least 2 times a day? It's healthy, I swear. And I opened this, and I saw that a couple $100 was taken out of it. I started freaking out. Where's the money going? Why is there money that's taken out? And I click into the account and see that the money was the auto deposit tithe of the month. And the first thought that ran through my head was, I need to cancel that. I think God would understand because I'm jobless. I don't need to be giving money right now. I think God would understand. And no joke, a couple seconds after, I all of a sudden felt this sense of peace and felt God just say, Matt, that's my money. That's my money, Matt. And I considered bringing it up to my wife that night saying, hey, we're going to stop tithing for a little bit because we can't do it. And I brought it up at dinner, but instead of saying that, the words I said was, hey, so I actually felt like we should cancel our tithe, but God corrected me, so we're just going to keep going. We're going to keep giving what we give. This isn't me trying to boast. It's actually, in my opinion, I'm voicing a real life miracle in this moment, being somebody who struggles financially and struggles with money in general. But I promise you that if God can start doing miracles for me, he probably can do it for you as well, if you're open to it. Now, I told Jeremy I didn't want to take a tithe after this. I didn't want to have everybody give their money out of guilt. I mean, if you want to, I'll give you my email. You can e-transfer me specifically. But I didn't want you to give out of guilt and shame. This talk and what I felt God telling me was that I just needed to address the elephant in some of our lives, and that is the hold that Mammon has on us. If you feel like you need to give, awesome, that's amazing. But really, at the end of the day, it is between you and God, and he cares about your heart. But when was the last time you checked your heart when it comes to money? Because it's a pretty scary thing to do. And the more scary it is, the more you probably should do it. So, church, the worship team can come on up. We're going to put up one more slide in a second. Oh, we're doing it now. Nope. Okay. Commit. Yeah. We're putting this up because I don't want you to walk away here saying, okay, yeah, what did he talk about? He talked about tithing. He talks about money. No, really, I just want you to walk out of here with the one question and actually sit with it and invite the Holy Spirit, ask yourself, is Mammon my God? Or is it Jesus? Is it Yahweh? So, if you guys can all stand with me. Father, we thank you so much just for another day that we get to hear your word, whether it's convicting or not. God, we thank you that you care so much for us and that you provide so much for us, Lord. And you know, when you looked on the earth, you didn't see 10% of us and decided to only save 10% of us. Father, you decided to give 100% of yourself to save 100% of us. And all you ask in return is that we do the same for you. And so God, we just welcome you into our hearts and invite you to help us examine the areas in our lives that we are not devoting to you 100%. Because Jesus, you deserve our 100%. But I also thank you that you see our hearts, not the amounts that we give. You see us for who we are, Lord. And whether it's a couple cents or a couple hundred, Lord, you care about what's going on in our hearts. And so, God, may this last song of praise, may this week be a time that we can sacrificially give to you, whether that looks like our time, our resources, our energy, or our money. Because you are Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and you deserve 100% of all of us. Amen.